Recording. Okay. So I'll be waiting before I get before I get started with today's lecture. Because today's lecture is a bit of a pain. Not for me. Well, actually it is. No, it's totally for me because I'm going to be repeating myself a whole lot today. And I'm trying to keep down on that because today we're going to be learning about how to read files. Unfortunately, it's a large class, so some of you may miss some key details, and so I'll have to repeat them. Also, it may be the first time that you're having to interact with your file system in a meaningful and organized way, right? In a way that basically you have to care about where file A is and where file B is and make sure they're in the same place, because that's actually going to be the bulk of the issues. Making sure that file A and file B are in the same place. Okay. So like I was saying, I'm hoping to have your exams graded by the end of the week. Next, we will be working on, so I hope that those by the end of the week. You should be working on your Mario Cash Credit program. Okay. Fairly straightforward on that. And then we are going to be hitting the basically midpoint, kind of like our capstone for the midpoint, I guess, like kind of bringing everything we did together with the hurricane tracker, which sounds like it's going to be really complex, but honestly, it's just going to be drawing on everything you've learned so far, plus file reading. Once we get there, it's honestly, basics are pretty much there, and it's about rounding out those rough edges and making sure that you've got a handle on those. I will be looking at what concepts need to be hammered out for the second exam, based off of what was missed a lot on the first. I try to have a rubric and try to keep to the rubric. Try to figure, so it's just a matter of so I'm still in the middle of grading, yes. But I'll try to do this fairly. And again, this is only 10% of the grade. I'm trying to also make sure that grades are in by the end of the week. But now that's what I want to remember. So Yom Kippur is tonight. So for those of you who are going to be celebrating, technically, hey, it's a big fast. So anyways, those of you who are participating in Yom Kippur, I wish you an easy fast. For those of you who don't know what that means, I will be basically out of contact from sundown to sundown. Okay. So if you're going to be trying to get in contact with me, you will not be able to get in contact with me for the next for basically 24 hours plus. So just be aware of that. So let's see. So the next assignment so let's take a look at the next big assignment coming up, which is the one under here for file reading, which is the hurricane tracker assignment. Also, feel free to download the latest data on Hurricane Ian if you want to track that one instead. If you go through the files in the hurricane tracker, you will notice that there are multiple things there. So let's see. Yeah, hurricane tracker. All right. Also notice that I have these giant bold letters here. Okay. So first off, the way this works is that I give you a bunch of programs, a bunch of programming to start out with. Unzip this folder into the directory of choice. That is where you're going to be want to keep working. Okay. You'll see a file called irma.py in it, and that is the file you're going to complete. Okay. It's essential that, so here's the big bold letters, and I'm going to read it out to you. So because I want to be clear about this. It is essential that all work is done in irma.py, and the file structure present in the zip file is maintained so that irma.py can find all the other files. If you do not know what this means when you get to this assignment, Ask your TA, ask me, or your classmates. Do not just try to blindly move forward. That's gonna just be pain, okay? Okay, demoing this assignment and getting an error due to a misplaced file or a file not found exception will be a 0 without any appeal whatsoever. Because the only way you're going to get it, because the only way that that file not found exception is going to occur is that you did not write your own code, or you did not learn how the file format structure works and just tried to go forward with it blindly. I don't like being like that strict about it, but I had too many, like a couple semesters ago before I implemented this, I had way too many students who would try to run it and they were like, why isn't this working? Because you didn't write your code. You got it from somebody else. And so you don't know how files work. So before we talk about how files work, which is going to be the focus of what today is, let's talk about what the heck a file is. So all data on your computer, right, at the end of the day is stored in a series of ones and zeros, right? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and download irma.py because it's got the two types of files in it that we care about. Sorry, I'm going to download the starter files. Already there. Nice. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and delete what's there. And I'll go ahead and don't worry, I know you can't see it, but I've got a zip file. I assume you know how to unzip a zip file. All right. And that should give you a folder called starter files, right? And there's going to be 3 folders in it. We've got a Python file and we've got 2 files on it. Now the programming, now the file names are typically in 2 parts. On Windows, the second part can often be hidden, which is the dot file type. So .txt for a text file, .py for a Python file, .java for a Java file, .docx or doc for a Word document file. You know, those are, now at the end of the day, believe it or not, none of those extensions matter. They're just part of the file name. The dot, but that is the important part. They are part of the name of the file. What the dot extension does, the .py, whatever, that tells your computer, it's a hint to your computer that when you go to open this program, what program should you use to open it with? So my computer is currently set up that if I double click on a Python file, it's going to open it up in VS Code. Okay, that's just the way it's set up. Similarly, if I've got a picture, a .png picture, it knows to open up in the basically image viewing program. Okay. So in reality, there's actually only 2 types of files, 2 categories, okay, because there's lots of file types, I guess, but there's 2 categories. The first is files like the source code you've been writing and text files, which we'll be going into. And by when I say text, I do mean text, TXT files. Files that have been encoded in such a way that humans can read them just directly. We can directly read the this file in particular, like all Python 3 files, is encoded in a form in the most ubiquitous format these days, a form of Unicode called UTF-8. It's very useful that basically everybody in the world now uses the same encoding, but this also means that you can use different languages when you write in Python. You aren't confined to English. You can use Japanese, Chinese, you can use whatever you want for your variable names and for your text in Python files. So, but anyway, we can open it up and it's meant to be read by humans. Things like a PNG file, like this, is not meant to be read by humans. It's meant to be opened up in a program, and then that program does something with it for humans, right? Similarly, let's see, these files, even though they say X, they've got the Excel icon on them, they're not Excel files. They just happen to open in Excel. These are what are called CSV files. And the default command is to open them in Excel because they're meant for that, but I can open up in Visual Studio Code, and you can see that this is a text file. It is human readable. CSV, by the way, stands for comma separated values, meaning that it's just a table that can be loaded into an Excel or other spreadsheet program. And the program knows like each row is a different line and each column is separated by a comma. That's how it knows where everything is. That simple. So it just simply loads it up. So when you open up a spreadsheet program, the spreadsheet knows what to do with it. Okay, Word documents, doc files, and PDFs, those are not text files because, well, try opening one up in VS Code. It will look like gibberish. In fact, let's go ahead and open one up now. I'm going to go to Project Gutenberg. So we're going to first go to Gutenberg.org. So it might be useful to start browsing to there if you're following along, by the way. To go to Gutenberg.org. Now, Gutenberg.org is the website of Project Gutenberg. One of those websites you should know about if you're currently taking your English classes, because they have electronic copies of all public domain books that your instructors probably care about. And basically anything in the US public domain can be found on that website, or the ones that really matter, I guess. They keep adding more stuff. It's not everything, but it's the important stuff. So things like the complete works of Shakespeare, Sherlock Holmes, and what we'll be looking at today, which is Dracula, because it's October. We could also do Frankenstein instead, but but Dracula's kind of iconic. Dracula by Bram Stoker. And this is a useful website for, at least for us, because it's useful non-random text. Okay, now there's different formats you can download this in. We could download this as it doesn't have a PDF. It has, let's see, it has EPUB. Yeah, okay, we can try downloading it with an EPUB with images, and we'll see if I've got a program to open. Oh yeah, I do. And this is an EPUB file, which is an open source, I believe, way of storing electronic books, right? And formatting them correctly. But if I tried to take this EPUB file, okay, and now I'm going to download it, which is going to be one of the tasks you're going to need to do today. And that might not sound hard to you, but it can be. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up, and then yes, I will save it, and I will put it in my documents folder. Okay, yes, it's already there. So, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start basically doing things that are rather interesting. Like, for instance, I'm going to take this, I'm going to open up VS Code, which is, that's just another editor, just like Idle is, but it deals with more things than just Python, which is why I'm currently using it, because I need it for this part, which is I'm going to take this file and try and open it up in here. And it gives me a warning. The text, and I'm going to read it to you. The file is not displayed in the editor because it isn't either binary or uses an unsupported text coding. So like I was saying, there's text files and binary files. Files like this, which require a program to read them, are binary files because they look like this. Gibberish to you, but important to your computer, because it's got commands and stuff on how to display it, how to format it, how you italicize stuff, and how to reproduce it. I mean, sure, you can find some things in here that look like text, but it's very hard. Okay. So it's all, this is not meant to be read by humans or manipulated by humans. Okay. So you don't have to worry about those kind of files. The only type of files we want to worry about manipulating and working with are text files. Okay. So we're going to talk. So I'm going to first talk abstractly, and then I will tell you when you need to follow along. Okay. So I've downloaded a file. So I'm going to open up Idle. first off. And I'm going to go ahead and let's see. I'll use code to create a test file, or just a basic test file. So I'm going to save it in my documents folder over here. And I'm just going to call it test.txt. You don't have to follow along yet. This is just, I'm demoing how file reading works in general, okay? So because if you don't have this file on your computer that I'm currently writing, you're not gonna work. You have to, because if you're gonna read a file, you have to have the file to read, okay? So I'm gonna just simply write, hello, world, this is a test file. This is line 4. Period. Save. All right, so now I'm going to open up an idle because everybody's familiar with that. And then I'm going to write a new program, which I'm going to call, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and again, I'm doing this in the program. So here's the first important thing. I'm putting this, I saved that test file in my documents folder. It might be a bit hard to see on my computer from back there, but I saved it in my documents folder. And I'm also putting the Python program in that folder. So the file that I'm reading and the Python file I'm currently writing to read it are going to be in the same folder. That is important. They don't, once you get better at this, they don't necessarily have to be. But for simplicity's sake, you want them in the same folder. So I'm going to call this my reader. Or rather, let's see. Let's call it first read. Doesn't really matter what I call it, the Python file. And so I should be blunt here. This is where I fell in love with Python, because file reading when I started working in programming was a real pain. But when I looked up how to do file reading in Python, it was a breath of fresh air by comparison. It was intuitive enough that I was able to figure it out without having to try, really. They said, okay, how do you open a file? Like this. Data is equal to, so this is basically where you're going to store the quote unquote file object that you're going to be using to read stuff. In other words, data is going to be basically the thing we use to read with. You can think of it as the file itself. Data is equal to open. And then you just simply, yeah, it's got a bunch of stuff in there. Don't worry about it quite yet. All I have to do is say, open what the file name is. And I called my file name test dot, and remember the extension is important, .txt. And then the polite thing to do is put in this. So we're going to open up test.txt, and then we put in a second argument, which is called R, which is the mode. There's 3 different modes. The first one, they are read, write, and append. This first one, R, stands for read, which sounds fairly straightforward. We're going to want it's what you do when you say, hey, I want to read this file. Use W when you want to write a file. So rather than printing stuff out, you might want to, put stuff in a file instead on the computer. And then the last one is append, where you already have a file, but you want to write more to it. Okay, there's other things you can do with it, but read and write are the big ones. But by default, it just works like this, test.txt. I want to open it like that. And then I run it, and that's it, really. It ran. I didn't get any errors, so everything's fine so far. But basically that means, okay, it found the file. To actually read the file, I was like, okay, how do you do this? And this is where what I mean by Python was intuitive. I was like, it can't be this easy. For line in data, print line. And the answer is yes, actually, it was that easy. Now, you might be wondering why it's printing out an extra line in each of them. And the answer is that inside this file, I have hello, and let's see if I can turn on that option. see if I can turn on that option, which is view. It says render white space, but it's not showing it. Okay, whatever. Point being is that I've got hello, and then after the hello is a enter character. In other words, the new line character. So when I read the line, it's actually reading HELLO/N, right? And then world is reading WORLD/N. And then it's print, and then so when I print it out, it's printing out a new line and then prints its own new line. That's why I'm getting 2 in this format. Okay. But file, that's it for file reading. You just need to read the file and then you can do what you want. There's actually multiple ways to read the file. That's not like the easiest way. The easiest way is just like do this. Text is equal to data.read print text. And what that does is that reads through the entire file in one go and stores the entire string of the file in text. The Python tutorial tells you it's your problem if the file is twice as big as your memory, so just be aware of that. But honestly, it's not an issue for those. And so here it's just printing, it's stored the entire file. Hello world, this is a test file, this is line 4. And it doesn't print out the new lines because I'm just printing out the entire text file all at once. So reading a file is fairly easy. The hard part, because I'm, led up to this big thing, is making sure your files are organized in the same place. And also, if you're trying to test something, being able to download it in the first place. So that's what we're going to subject you to. Sorry, that's what we're going to do. It makes it sound so horrible. But a lot of today is going to be following these directions. So what I want you to do is so we're going to start from the beginning here. First, and we're going to all encounter the same errors, by the way. Or rather, there's going to be an error in this. We're going to fix it. There's just an oddity with the way Gutenberg works. But honestly, it's still like the best kind of example for this because it makes it. So first things first, open up Project Gutenberg. You can Google Gutenberg, or you can go to just www.gutenberg.org. Okay. Once you're there, search for Dracula. You can click on Dracula by Bram Stoker, the first one that has the most downloads. And now we've got a bunch of things here. So what you want to do is go over, and now this will depend on what kind of system you're using. Because I'm using a Windows system. Could be completely different for all of you using a Mac. I click on this, and at least in Windows, in Firefox, if I click on plaintext.udf8, it brings me up the text file in the browser. So anybody on a Mac, tell me what happened when you clicked on that. Same thing? Anybody not get this? If you got a save file dialog, save it where you want it to go. Okay? Now over here, we've just got a bunch of text. Okay? Now to save this file, there's a bunch of ways to save it. Because this is just a text file. It just happens to be rendered in the browser. Okay? To save it, there's a couple ways. First, using the save hotkey, which on a Mac is Command S, and Windows, that's simply Control S, right? And you can save it there. You can also, if you can't find that, you should be able to right click and save page as, or some equivalent thing on your web browser. Because I'm using Firefox, you may look different on your end. But the point being is that you need to save this, and you want to save the text file. So it should come up down here as the type of file that you're saving it as is a text file. If you're saving it as an HTML file, that's also a text file, but it's not what you wanted. But anyway, save. So it will say PG 345, meaning it's the 345th file that was uploaded to Project Gutenberg. But we're going to just go ahead and save it wherever you want to work on your Python file. Save it wherever you would make your Python file. And maybe give it a name that's easier to remember, like Dracula. Right? Is that step clear to everybody? Okay. Okay. Now, open up where, now, just to be clear, you'll probably want to find where you saved it. Okay, like over here, I put it in my documents folder and saved here as this file, Dracula.txt. I know it's hard to see because it's just the way the Windows UI works. Okay, you want to save it there. Okay, and I can test it by double clicking it and opening it up, and I see the text file, right? So now the second step is opening up your editor of choice. I'll be using idle because the vast majority of students who are new to this will be using idle. We're going to go ahead and create a new file, either by going to the file tab, and hitting new file, or using the hotkey, which is Control or Command N, depending on whether you're using a Windows or a Mac. If you're using Linux, I assume you know what you're doing and you can completely ignore me. That is the wonderful thing about Linux users. I can just simply assume they're getting an A in the class, and I've yet to be proven wrong. So here, when we go, so now that we've got a blank Python script, we're going to want to save that somewhere. Now, by default, at least on Windows, idle wants to save it in my Python program folder in program files. That's not where I want you to save this. If you save it there, you're going to get an error, because you're going to try to find it, because you won't be able to find it. You need to save it wherever you put your Python file, wherever you put the Dracula file. Okay, wherever you put that Dracula file, that's where you have to save this. Okay. So here I put it in my documents. It might be in your downloads folder. That might have been where you saved it. You could even move your Dracula file to somewhere else and then put your Python file there. But your Python file and your Dracula file need to be in the same place. I'm going to call this second read because this was my second time reading, second read.py. Okay. So now do the following. Data is equal to open, and then the file, whatever file name you used for the file. I used Dracula.txt. You might have used something else. You might have done PG345.txt, but remember to put whatever it was in. And remember, it's case sensitive, meaning that that Python cares whether it's Dracula or Dracula. It cares. It cares about what the format is. Okay. And then you'll want to put it in read format. Put only this line in, because if we go any further than this and try to actually read the file on Windows, you should get an error. But anyway, doing this should not get you an error. Okay, so read that file. How many of you got, so type this in. How many of you got an error at this point? Somebody should have, because normally that's the case. Yes. What was the error? There's no file. So your operation not permitted. That's a new one. Okay. So no file means that you need to find where the Dracula file. Okay. And the Python file is where? Yep. So you gotta either move the Python file to the downloads folder or the Dracula to where the Python file. Okay. Now let's save that. Operation not permitted, Dracula, and so where is okay, try putting your file and the program in different folder, because you have issues with Mac and having to get to the operator on their own desktop. It's weird. So like try putting in your documents, or try putting in or whatever he's saying. What were you saying? And it works in your documents folder, right? Okay. Yep. So yeah, I don't know why Macs have been giving me issues about manipulating files on your desktop, but it's been weird. Okay. So now for the next step, now let's do the next thing, which is text. So let's actually read the file and store the whole text as a document. Okay, and this should error for Windows users like myself. So I'm just very interested in to see before we go and fix it, because it's very easy to fix once you know the issue. Okay, text is equal to okay, Vinay, what was the, go into a bit more detail. What was the error? If you could paste the information for me, that would be great. So next, let's do text is equal to data.read. And that should give me an error. Okay. So people using a Mac who were able to get it working, what do you get if you do data.read? You get nothing. That's awesome. Okay. And Windows users, whoever was on Windows like myself, did you get an error like this? Yes. Okay. So the reason for this, okay. Yeah, if you're two file, so first, okay, and on Zoom, let's see. So file not found, no such file, Dracula.txt. If you're getting a file not found error, or it's not finding it, then you either didn't spell it the same, or it's not in the location where you think it is. It's trust me on that one. If you are getting a file not found exception, you need to put them in the same folder. You may think they are, or they aren't, or it could be a spelling error. Okay. Trust me on that one. I will, if you cannot fix it, I will get back to you, because I plan on dismissing this class early so that I can go through and meet with students individually to try to fix this, because students will just suffer in silence if I don't. Okay. Okay, so for those of you who got an error, this is because of a quirk of Python and Windows interacting with each other. Python assumes that everything is supposed to be stored in the format, the one true format, which is UTF-8. But when it reads files, it assumes that it's reading stuff in the way it should. Yes, is that a hand up there? Oh, sorry. So it assumes though, sorry, it relies on Windows telling it what the default format for files is. And the default format that Windows wants to tell its text files to be in is Windows version of Latin 1, which is this wonderfully obvious CP1252 format. Totally obvious and not obtuse at all. But this is a UTF file that we downloaded. So we're just going to tell Python to ignore Windows, because Windows is having a dumb moment. And what we're going to do is tell Python that it's a UTF-8 file. This should not be having, this is not something you should have to do at any other point in the entire semester, just for this exercise. And you can do this too if you're running on Mac. It's going to not hurt anything. And you just simply put encoding equals UTF-8, all lowercase. That's all you have to do to fix that error if you're on Windows. If you're getting this specific error, which is Unicode decode error. And basically it's just thinking that the file's in a different format than it actually is. Like, you know, for instance, it's, you know, you're thinking it's thinking that the Excel file should be opened in Windows, sorry, in Word kind of thing. Or when you try to email your teacher, or when you have a late assignment and then you email your document, but it's actually a zip file. And so when your teacher tries to open it, you're like, oh, I don't know why it's working. Yeah, well, I know that one. Yep. Yep, that's correct. You want to make sure that you download the file as the text file, not as like the page. Okay. So anyway, now that I put the encoding .utf-8, we now know it now knows what to read it. So I just simply read it, and there we go. And now we can actually go through line by line. There's a couple of different ways we can do this line by line. We can simply say, hey, we could do, let's see, I believe Python has lines. We can do lines is equal to text dot split. I believe that's something that Python can do. Yes, it is. And let's go ahead and I will simply print out the first 5 lines of this file. Print lines, sorry, from colon to line 5. 1 second. And this will print out the first 5 lines of the Dracula file. Yes. Sorry? Columns? Well, you can't really read an Excel file unless you use a special library in Python. For CSV files, you can split it up into a 2D array. So let's see. Now instead, let's go from line 100 to 105 instead. That should actually give us some content. Chapter 1, empty line, Jonathan Harker's journal, empty line, kept in shorthand. Actual thing. Beginning of the book. So we can actually read the file here. We can do things like go like for line. So what this text.split did is that it said, hey, we've got this giant block of text here. I don't want to deal with it all at once. So the text.split new line, what that does for us is that allows us to, split it up into individual lines. It's now a list of strings. And now I can go through them individually. For line in lines, print line, and that would take forever. So let's not do that. Instead, I again will go through I'm going to use a slice because again, 100 to 110. And that's going to print out the lines individually for this file from lines 100 to 110. There's nothing also stopping me from like going further and like printing out the first letter of each line. Oh, index, right? Well, if it's an empty line, I can't get the first letter of the line, I guess, right? So there's that. So if len line is greater than 0, I have to remember to actually type the things I'm saying, then print out that first letter, which is chapter 1, Jonathan Harker's diary, then kept in shorthand, right? So what other things can we do? We can do things like analysis so now the useful thing about being able to read lines is that if you can read text file, you can perform some kind of basic analysis on it. Most basic analysis we can perform on here is we could count like the words that are, we can count stuff. So for instance, we could have we could write a program a small script to count the number of times Dracula appears in here in the file, in this file. So for line in lines. If, let's see, line num vamp is equal to number of vampires is equal to line dot count Dracula. And I was going to write a whole if statement and stuff, but why bother? Python can do it for me. And I'll just do an accumulator. Total vamp is equal to 0. Num vamp is equal to the number of times we saw Dracula in that line. And then total vamp is equal to total vamp plus the number of times I saw Dracula this time. So this will accumulate, this will have a full pattern of how many times I saw Dracula. And then I obviously want to have something to show for my work, so we can print out total vamp. And so if I run this, we should come up with something. Apparently it says 35 times, which seems a bit low for Dracula, to be honest. Let's go ahead and open up the file. Let me go ahead and open up the file Dracula and see what we've got here. So Dracula.txt, Control F, Dracula. Assuming I can spell, it has 41. The count of 41, so Dracula. Well, I mean, oh yes, that's definitely it. Because over here we have your friend Dracula, you know, over there. So that's probably why. We can fix this by saying, we can make that consistent by going line is equal to line.lower, which will transform all the letters into lowercase and then store it in line. Oh, yeah, and then of course it won't compare, because if they're all lowercase, it won't match Dracula. And then try finding a Dracula like this, all lowercase. And yeah, we get 41 total counts of Dracula. Because remember, case matters. Now, the reason I did count rather than asking if Dracula in line is because it's ostensibly possible that Dracula occurs more than once in a line. Right? Now, on Thursday, I will go into more detail about the other file reading of the other file modes, such as file writing. But I want to make sure that that any errors that are occurring will get fixed. So the entire point of the file reading, though, is that, again, it allows you to do things with file, allows you to have, to deal with inputs and outputs in a sensible manner. And almost, again, anything can be read by Python, including those binary files. We're going to be working with text files today and for the rest of the semester, but honestly, we'll be working with a lot of stuff. Now, to be clear, for incentive as to why you want to learn this, my final exam last semester, generally, one of the questions that I asked on a previous final exam, and I almost always ask a variation of this in the final exam, is the question that goes like this. Here's a file with Social Security's numbers in it. I would like you to remove all the Social Security numbers. Write a script that removes all the Social Security numbers and saves a new file with all the Social Security numbers replaced by redacted or whatever. It's actually only, and if you actually pay attention to what I'll be teaching you over the next couple of weeks, guess how many lines that's going to take? 3 would be nice. Well, unfortunately, you'll have to deal with 7 to 10. Once you know about the power of regular expressions, you can really deal with it. I plan on teaching you guys regular expressions. It's one of the things that I make room for in the curriculum, because it's extremely valuable to learn regular expressions, and there's pretty much no other appropriate place to teach it other than automata theory, which is an optional 3,000, 4,000 level class, which makes no sense, because they're just so gosh darn useful. Okay. But that is typically, but a lot of the questions on the exam will involve, at least one of the questions on the final exam involves doing something like downloading a file that I have online. Now, for the next exam, I'm considering making it, fairly open in the resources, almost open to everything, including your computer, right? Except for basically using the web to browse the internet to use Google and stuff. I'll have very specific rules, but the reason for this is that now we're at this point, I'm no longer really limited. I no longer need to really restrict myself to certain questions. So let's talk about what we're going to be doing, and then I will dismiss you. So the hurricane tracker is as follows. We will be once you're done with the necessaries of getting your of getting the Mario and cash credit program finished. Mastering your if statements and your while loops is the point of that. Okay. Once you're done with that, you will want to work on the Hurricane Tracker. The Hurricane Tracker has a video attached to the bottom, by the way, and a very detailed write-up on how to do it or what you need to do. Okay. The output should look something like this, where you run the program and this is what gets drawn, which is a hurricane tracker, which tracks the progress of a hurricane, showing the intensity of the hurricane as it goes along. Now, while this may look very complicated, it's actually just a turtle program in disguise. That's what this is. It's just it's turtles all the way down. That what we're seeing here is that hurricane is actually just a turtle. And what it's doing is that it is reading where to go. So let's go ahead and open up the Irma file. The starter files over here. We have the Irma.py, and in here we have a bunch of text. I'll go ahead and grab Irma.csv over here, which has the progress of Irma. Okay. And it has the date, the time, the latitude, longitude, wind, and the pressure. So Irma.py has two functions. It's got Irma setup, which is already written for you. You do not, and notice in the comments underneath it, it says, do not change the code in this function. And it does all the hard work of setting up the turtle for you. So I'm not setting up the background so that everything looks good. We run it. You'll see that it blinked for a second. I'll prevent it from blinking. Turtle.done. When we run the file, just the blank file, you'll see that it gives us this, which is, the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. The turtle exists. It's just off the screen at the moment. And the big thing it does is that it translates the coordinate system to longitude, latitude, so that you can tell the turtle to go to a latitude and longitude. Now over here is the only thing that is a bit weird. The function returned three things. Well, it returned one thing. It returned a tuple, which we unpacked into three things. It returned the turtle, the window, and the picture. You don't need to worry about this. You don't need to worry about this. All you need is to worry about the turtle T. That is your turtle for doing the program. The way this works is that you read the file and tell the turtle where to go. And then you change your color and the thickness of the line depending on what you read. Details are written down in the description. This program is one of my favorites because it looks very, very difficult. It's very, very intimidating. It's not. It's simpler than you think. If you get yourself into a very difficult point, you're overthinking it. The hardest part about this is translating latitude and longitude into X and Y. Think for a second about which one is X and which one is Y. That's what I mean. So once we do that, so that is basic. Once we put that all together, next week again, tomorrow on Thursday, I will work on file writing. Once we go to module 8, we'll be working on basically, I'm going to be going through tools that will help you later on in your CS kind of stuff with dictionaries, as well as, and these will also be valuable tools for you, if this is like the only CS class you take. If you learn dictionaries, you're going to be really, really set in terms of knowledge. So module 8 is dictionary, module 9 is Monte Carlo approximations, and then from there on, we will be working on from week 10 on, we will be working on the final we're gonna start on the final project. I'm going to try to do the second exam on module with on week 9 week 9, this is week 7. So I think week 10 would probably be the appropriate time. I don't know, week 7, 8, yeah, that would be a bit soon, I think, doing it on week 9, right? So week 10, most like at the latest for the second exam. So yeah, that's what I've got for today. And so for those of you who are still having trouble reading files, stay behind. Everybody else, if you're able to read the files just properly, you're dismissed for today. Okay. Yep. Downloads? Yeah, you can download the file. Yep, here's oh yeah, that's definitely not working, but it's not in function. But that makes sense. Yes. Yes. Working starter files.txt do not download the file. Working in the folder that I gave it. So yes, yes, I deliberately canceled all my office hours on Wednesday. So if you need to meet with me, send me an email. Yeah, I'll be happy to work with you. Okay. Yep.
I met up with today.
Uh-huh.
And he said that he met with Mark. We want to reach out to you because he doesn't know how to give a remake or make up.
All right. Okay, I'll send me, do you mind sending me an email confirming, and I will try to send you a copy of the exam, okay? I'll send the TA, the copy of the exam, okay?
I'll take the first one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, worst case scenario, all they have to do is just simply proctor you and make sure that you're just using your only single sheet. That's their only job.
Okay. Thank you. Where are you on
Turtle dot. But you only don't get that if you're working United. Right. Okay, now it's saying turtle has no attribute closed. Turtle dot done. That's what you don't need it though if you're working in idle.
Okay.
That just simply tells it to wait until I close the window. Does that make sense? So it says don't close it on your own automatically.
Just wait.
Just wait for me to close the window. Don't close it on your own automatically. But Python keeps it up. Sorry, idle will keep it up automatically. That's just the way it works.
That's
Okay. Okay.
I just want to, the Hurricane Irma.
Stop share. Let me stop sharing, and I'm going to stop recording, and then